How might we rethink hiring? Today, I want to tell you about the future of hiring. I want to give you an insight into the world of the modern day recruiter and how our attention is shifting away from looking backwards at your experience towards looking forwards at your potential. This shift is important, it's inevitable, and it's highly beneficial to all of you graduates with bucket loads of potential. But before I get into what I mean by potential and how you can best showcase it, let me tell you a little bit about the traditional world of recruitment. So traditionally, recruiters looked at where you went to university, what companies you worked at, how long you worked there for. This is known as experience-based hiring. It is essentially a CV screening exercise that looks at brand names. There's a major flaw with experience-based hiring, and that is that it can significantly limit the number of eligible candidates for any one role and the diversity of those candidates for any one role, because it can introduce a huge amount of bias in the system because you are giving preferential treatment to individuals who are privileged enough to attend certain top universities and get their foot in the door of certain top companies. Then COVID hit, and this changed things, because with COVID came two major trends. The first trend was the rise of the remote worker. Suddenly, employees no longer had to live within a 1-hour radius of their offices. They could live outside their cities. They could live in entirely different countries. And this significantly opened up the number of eligible applicants for any one role. The second trend was a focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And employers started to set targets for diversity amongst their workforce, whilst employees started to demand more diversity amongst their peer groups. And this introduced a need for a new type of screening, a screening that could screen a much larger pool of candidates for any one job and a much more diverse pool for any one job that was no longer so comparable based on their prior experience. This is when skills-based hiring came about. And employers started to look at your existing skills coming into a role instead of your previous experience. If you're applying to be a software engineer, what are your coding skills? If you're going to be a product designer, what are your product design skills? This significantly leveled the playing field, especially for more diverse talent. And it also became a better predictor of job performance. So all good, except then a third trend hit. And that trend is generative AI. And this was just after COVID. And we've all felt the effects of generative AI in some way, shape, or form in our work. But here's the thing. The market has barely doubled since ChatGPT came online. It is predicted to quadruple by the end of this decade. So this is going to fundamentally shift our industries, our companies, and the skills required to thrive in this new world. By some estimates, half of our jobs are not going to exist in 10 years' time. By other estimates, we're going to have to reskill every 5 years, then 2 years, then 1 year, until our skills are obsolete, and we're going to have to retrain entirely. One thing is certain, skills are becoming obsolete at a much faster pace than ever before. So screening based on skills is becoming a lot less relevant. Instead, we need to look at the potential of individuals to thrive in a fast-changing work environment. So I've been thinking about this question of how do you assess potential in others for nearly a decade now. And this is because I used to work in venture capital. And when I was a venture capital investor, I was making investment decisions into early-stage companies with very limited operating history. And so a lot of my decision-making was based on the founders, the strength of the founding team. Do they have what it takes to scale a company and beat the odds of success, which, by the way, are very low for startups? And I couldn't overly rely on their experience because most of these founders had never scaled such a company before. Couldn't really look at their skills because the skills required to run a company that's 1 year old are fundamentally different from the skills required to run a company that's 3 years old, 5 years old, 10 years old. So I had to look at their potential. And then I refined this potential-based assessment model when I set up my own recruitment firm. And what I do today is that I find exceptional talent across the continent of Africa, and I place them into fast-growth international companies. I'm basically a matchmaker. And the way that I matchmake is I look at two things. I look at the candidate and their potential or their ability to excel in a fast-changing work environment. I also look at the employer, because there's an onus on the employer to nurture that potential over time. And together, these two things make up what I call potential-based hiring. Now, I'm going to focus more on the candidate side because I think that that's more relevant to you as soon-to-be graduates. So how do I assess potential in individuals? I look at three things. I look at your personality traits. Do you have the personality traits that are highly predictive of doing well in a fast-paced environment? I'll come back to that in just a second. I look at your technical excellence. Do you have what it takes to hit the ground running? Technical excellence is actually often a proxy for personality traits, because if you have the right personality traits, then you'll excel at anything that you put your mind to. And importantly, I look for the passion you have for your craft. Are you inherently curious and excited about what you do? Because this will fuel your intrinsic motivation to keep on working in that space, to stay ahead of the curve. You'll stay competitive. So, coming back to personality traits, perhaps surprisingly, there is very little consensus, at least industry-wide, around which are the kind of winning traits for high potential individuals. So alongside my team, we've done a lot of research. We've run our own assessments, conducted a lot of interviews, and we've bucketed these traits into 4 categories that rather conveniently spell grit. Everyone loves a good acronym. Let me go through these one by one. Goal-focused. Pretty much everything about business is about setting and achieving goals. Here's our friend Steve Jobs. He was known for his maniacal focus at work. When you're goal-focused, you're analytical, you're strategic, you're what people call a strong problem solver. You're focused. Being goal-focused does not mean that you achieve every single goal that you set, but it does mean that you learn from the goals that you didn't achieve so that you have a higher chance of success next time you set a goal. Remember this when you go into application and interview stage. Structure your CV around your achievements and quantify these wherever you can. And when you go into an interview, do not rattle off a list of responsibilities and tasks, which is what many candidates do. It can be quite boring. It doesn't make you stand out. Focus on your achievements and your learnings for every role that you've had. R is for resilience. This is one of the most important traits in leaders, right? My friend Nelson Mandela, 27 years in prison before he became president. That is the definition of resilience right there. So someone who's resilient is typically proactive. They have a bias for action. They make rational decisions wherever they can, not emotional ones. They have a growth mindset, and they persevere even in the face of adversity. And this is a really important one because so many of us, myself included, can be so tempted to fold, to give up when we face setbacks. But ultimately, setbacks make us stronger. They increase our chances of success down the line. They sharpen our passion, our focus, our excellence. Integrity. Great leaders care. No one wants to work with a bunch of high-performing jerks. Okay, someone with integrity is doing the right thing even when no one's looking. This is the founder of Econet, a Zimbabwean, where my father's from. He's one of the most successful businessmen across Africa. He scaled an incredibly successful company whilst maintaining a high degree of integrity. Strive is famous for continuously refusing to pay bribes and standing up against corruption. Integrity is really difficult to measure in other people, so I like to use 2 proxies. I look at authenticity. How authentic are you about your likes and your dislikes? Your strengths, your areas for your development, your successes, your struggles. And your level of empathy is the second one. How empathetic are you towards your customers, your colleagues, your managers? Can you really put yourself in their shoes? T is for thoughtful communication. Thoughtful communication is simple, it's important, and it is highly considerate of the person you're communicating with. A thoughtful communicator has crystal clear thinking. They can translate incredibly complex problem into very simple and effective communication. Here we have Leonardo DiCaprio in The Wolf of Wall Street, for those of you who didn't recognize him. And in the scene, he's asking his colleague, "Sell me a pen." "Yes." Now, many people, when asked this question, will say something along the lines of, "Buy this pen. It's a beautiful pen. It's a rare pen. Only 1% of the population has this pen. You'll be special if you buy this pen." And that is typically not the right way to sell a pen. If you want to sell a pen, you want to ask one question. Do you need a pen? By asking that question, you are putting yourself in the shoes of the other person so that you can better tailor your communication so that it is more effective and you can sell that pen. So a thoughtful communicator is very curious about the person that they're communicating with. And again, remember this when you go into interview season. Be curious about the person that's interviewing you. Be curious about the company. Engage as much as possible. Again, I interview a lot of candidates who spend 10 to 15 minutes talking at me about their experience without engaging me. Try to limit those to 3 minutes, 4 minutes. Engage, be curious. So if you can demonstrate these traits, you will be golden to employers. And I have a personal anecdote here. My company this year hired our first ALU graduate earlier this year. That's right. And we didn't hire her for experience. We didn't hire her for existing skill set. We hired her for her potential. And this woman is amazing. She is an incredibly strong problem solver, deep level of insights. She learns new skills like I've never seen before. She has high integrity. She takes on feedback and makes the next piece of work even stronger. She is the employee of the future. So before I leave you today, 3 practical tips to showcase your potential in interviews. Number 1, contextualize your personality traits. Okay, don't just say I'm curious and I have high integrity. Try to think of examples where you've demonstrated curiosity and high integrity. A good way to think about this is to think about your superpower and the underlying traits that allow that. My superpower, for instance, and your superpower is what you love doing and basically what you're better at than most people, right? And everyone has a superpower. My superpower is that I am quite good at, and I love, assessing and investing in the potential of others. And the underlying traits that allow me to do that are that I am highly curious of other people, I'm highly empathetic of others, I can put myself in their shoes, and I'm typically a thoughtful communicator, so I can extract the truth out of others. 2. Oops, there's 3. 2. Showcase your technical excellence. Publish your portfolio of work and make that accessible to recruiters and companies. Write thought pieces on LinkedIn. Build a YouTube following. Run a podcast. Right? These will speak so much more loudly than what you put in your CV. So showcase your technical excellence. And last but not least, build a relationship with every interviewer along the way, always. Build a meaningful relationship. The bedrock of a meaningful relationship is trust. Okay? Get everyone to trust you. 2 ways that you can build trust at the beginning of an interview. 1, align on shared experiences. If you don't feel you can align with someone on shared experiences, then try to align on values. What is it that you value? Do you value high integrity in others? Do you value good food and family? In the UK, we all start our conversations with our massive dislike of bad weather, right? Align on values. If you can get someone to trust you and to like you, then they will move mountains for you. Thank you very much.